Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, and access and enjoyment of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Michael Juergens. Now, Michael is an adventure racer and founder of a number of companies, a wine company, a rum company. He is also a senior partner with a Big Four consulting firm where he runs the Winery Solutions practice, overseeing the portfolio of services the firm provides to wineries. This has got to be a fantastic business, by the way, just to be around wine. He is also a best-selling author, certified sommelier, and a serial entrepreneur and professor at the time, UC Irving. That's fantastic. I have to ask you, Michael, welcome. Do you wear an S on your chest?
Thanks for having me, Howard. Yeah, it's always fun listening to somebody introduce me and I'm sitting there going like, shit, I do all that? Wow. No wonder I'm not sleeping very much.
Oh my God. I'm like, a good day for me, obviously, as I wake up, I have a cup of coffee. I'm in Las Vegas. I face east, so I watch the sunrise. I see the sunset up on the deck, and that's a good day for me. And I do my work, coaching and podcasting. But oh my God, this guy's like Superman here.
You know what's funny is I went through a crazy divorce, a really, really gnarly divorce, and I ended up having 50-50 custody of my kids. And so, I'm a single dad with 3 kids, and I had to organize my life in such a way that I could still get my day job done and also take care of 3 kids in 3 different schools and stuff. And so I learned all these techniques for kind of time management. And I also built my schedule around getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and all that worked. I mean, it was triage, right? I'm just trying to not die. And all in the middle of this. And then the kids grew up, and all of a sudden I had capacity for days. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the secret to my time management. Go through a nasty 10-year divorce.
Okay. I've never been married. That's a whole other issue. I mean, if you were a psychologist, we'd have a lot to talk about, but I can imagine all of a sudden you just have this big vacuum that's just been released. And it's like, what do I do with myself? And first of all, are you still getting up at 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Most days I get up between 3 and 4. Well, it kind of depends on, cause I travel a lot. I'm in multiple time zones. So that impacts it as well. But if I'm home, yeah, I'm generally up between 3 and
4. Okay. Now, when you get up in the morning, I'm curious about this because I have my routine. After the essential activity, what do you do at 3 o'clock in the morning when you get up?
So my main, first thing I do when I get up every morning is I pound at least 24 ounces of water, which is a trick I stole from somebody. I think maybe Brian McKenzie, one of the performance guys.
Okay.
And then I immediately follow that with coffee.
Okay.
And then the combination of those two typically leads to a third activity.
Okay, I get that. Okay. But I was alluding to that first activity, but I get that.
So
I get
it's
that.
number 3 for me, but
okay.
So, but what ends up happening is I then tend to deploy that free time before anyone else gets up. I have a couple hours into whatever is kind of the most pressing issue of the day. So sometimes it's I'm behind on my writing and I just take, 2 hours and I focus on getting some content written. Sometimes I'm behind on work stuff and I just grind through emails. Some days what I've been trying to add in is a morning I was doing yoga, but it was taking too long. And so I've been trying to add in a stretch routine, a 30-minute, pure isometric stretching.
Sure.
But I haven't quite gotten that 100% plugged in yet, but but yeah, so I kind of start the day the same way, but then the activities that I use that free time for vary day to day.
Okay. Okay. For our listeners, this is the Outdoor Adventure Series, but I mean, Michael just shared a couple of things. It's like, would have been perfect on Success Insight or other podcasts, but it's like, wow, first of all, 3 o'clock, I love that. I'm more of I get up at 4 o'clock, because here the sun is starting to come up at 4 o'clock. So I'm
Right.
now, you are an adventure racer, a scuba diver. Is that still a part of the life of Michael Juergens, or is that taking a back seat? Because you've got you've got a lot of other things going on.
No, it's very much a part of my life.
Okay.
What ends up happening is I feel like if I'm not doing something of a physical nature, it tends to impact the rest of my life in every single aspect in a negative way.
Okay.
Specifically what I'm doing, it is also a function of kind of what the next thing is. So if I'm training for a race, I'll be out at, potentially at 4 o'clock in the morning training for the race. And depending on what that race is, if I'm running in snow, I'll be down on the beach running in sand. If I'm running at altitude, I'll be, doing breath work with an altitude simulator, stuff like that. So it just kind of depends on what sort of the next milestone in front of me is.
Okay. Now, by the way, and for our listeners, our video's on. We're going to have this up on YouTube. As you lift your arm a little bit, I see a little bit of artwork. So I have to ask you, grew up in Southern California. Oh my God. I got nothing. I'm trying to I eat a lot of probiotic yogurt, so my hair is growing back. So cool with that. Growing up in Southern California, were you a surfer?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my elementary school was in Newport Beach, and it was on the bluff and kind of overlooking the bay, and that's pretty much what you did. Like, we didn't play football, we didn't play basketball, we played volleyball, and we surfed. And some of us, BMX'd and skateboarded. I was in that latter category as well.
That's like the perfect life. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's weird because even like earlier today, I was getting a ride from an Uber guy, and he's a football dude, the football guy and the football. So what's your team? And I'm like, well, I don't really have a team. He's like, well, you're from Southern California. Are you Raiders or Rams guy? And I'm like, well, I'm neither. And it just he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that, well, what do you do? Like a bunch of other shit, but not watch football. And I think it's a function of where I grew up. My college didn't have a football team, at UC Irvine. My elementary school, that wasn't what you did.
Very cool. When did you begin to really elevate the competitiveness? Because I can imagine in high school, perhaps even college, playing beach volleyball, or the surfing. But when did those kinds of activities elevate themselves to being really full on competitive?
It's funny. I don't consider myself much of a competitive guy. And I think that's probably why I never really took to team sports. I'm competitive with myself.
That would be my point. Yeah.
Like, I'll give you a perfect example. So my son and I, we went to run a marathon on the sand in Australia. This was a few years ago. And it was a really small field. It was a challenging, shitty course. It was really hot. I think the field was maybe 40 people or something. But so my son and I ran it, and we finished dead last. And not only did we finish dead last, we were like an hour behind, like the second to last finisher. And right at the finish line, like right before, my son like sprinted and ran across the finish line, 20 yards ahead of me. So I finished dead last. And I have a picture of me standing there afterwards, and I'm got my finisher medal, and I have the biggest grin on my face. And I finished dead last. And yet you can tell by looking at this picture, I just am having the time of my goddamn life. And I look at that picture sometimes to remind myself, like, this isn't about, being faster or better or stronger than the next, because you'll never win that game ever, unless you're Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, right? So the goal for me is to find the joy in it. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. And so I'm competitive with that. Like, how do I find the most joy? But I'm not really competitive with, I gotta win, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And I can appreciate not having the team. I mean, I grew up in Detroit. It's on the back of our birth certificates. You are from Detroit, and we have to even root for the lowly Detroit Lions. Okay, my entire life. You and I are probably very similar age ranges. Maybe you're a little younger. I never in my lifetime. I digress. What I love though is you're competitive with yourself, seeking to improve, and you're living your best life along the way. Uh, how did you? I mean, going to Australia, that's you kind of have to plan to do that, execute that. How did you end up in some of these other places? Like, again, I want to talk a little bit about Bhutan, beautiful country, Himalayas. I mean, I would love to go there just to take pictures, eat food, which I imagine would be kind of interesting. But how'd you end up there for a race?
My girlfriend had read a book in high school about a woman who moved in the 80s, who went to Bhutan and felt to teach English and fell in love with the place and found a guy and got married and stayed there. It's kind of like an eat, pray, love. Ironically, I've never read the book. I think it's kind of better if I don't, because I have a picture of it in my head. Anyway, so my girlfriend had been talking about, kind of like you, like, it would be really great to go to Bhutan. It would be really great to go to Bhutan. And I didn't know where it was. I thought it was an island in Indonesia. That's in my head, what I thought. So I'm on a bunch of different like race lists, and I got an email that said in the subject line, Bhutan Marathon. And so I clicked on it. It just said, hey, we're working a deal with the Bhutan government to get some foreigners in there to run their international marathon. We're taking 10 people. If you want to be considered, fill out this application. So I immediately clicked on it, filled it out. And then they selected us. And so I went to my girlfriend. I was like, hey, we're going to Bhutan. Surprise, baby, I love you, to run a marathon. And she goes, awesome, we're going to the Himalayas. And I go, no, we're not. We're going to Indonesia. And she goes, no, we aren't.
No, we're not.
It's by Tibet. And I was like, oh, wow. All right. But I guess we'll see what happens there. So that's how it happened the first time. It was literally, I knew nothing about it. Other than my girlfriend wanted to go there and there was going to be a race there. And so I signed this up.
Wow. Talk about timing and just being right place, right time. And thank the girlfriend there.
Yeah.
When you first discovered this opportunity to race, so I'm making the assumption, you'll correct me, you've been racing for quite a while. I mean, and this opportunity to go to Bhutan came up. And I would imagine this is the last 5 to 10 years, or
I think this was 2016.
Okay, so that's 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So
5, 6 years ago.
And you've been involved in the consulting and this practice the portfolio you're working on is the wineries. And so I'm just trying to connect some dots here. So you actually, you are working with the consulting company. You obviously have a love of wine. And I want to talk a little bit about the level of effort that goes into becoming a sommelier. I mean, I know that's not for the faint of heart. That's a tough training. But so you went to do this race, and you had this epiphany while you were there. And I'd love if you could share, as you're racing here, this epiphany that really connected two elements of your life together.
Yeah. So I am a sommelier, but what I've been studying for is what's called the Master of Wine certification. There's about 420 people in the world who've achieved that, and 60 in the US. And I'm on deck to become the 61st.
Wow.
And so in part of that study, and I had traveled to many, many global wine regions, just to learn about the region and understand it better. When I went to Bhutan and I saw these terrace slopes with these beautiful crops, I just assumed that there was wine there, because like every country that can grow wine does, or can grow grapes to make wine, they do it. They have it for thousands of years. So I just assumed it must be there. So I was asking everybody, hey, where's the wineries? Where's the wineries? And finally, I was at a dinner with some government people and they said, we don't have it. And I was like, why not? You guys are screwing up. This is perfect. You should make a wine industry. And I just
Looking like a true consultant, by the way.
it's not what you can tell that you have these assets, why put them to use? And so yeah, that's what started the whole conversation. And then, inevitably here we are. And I created the wine industry there.
That's phenomenal. Now, culturally, do the inhabitants, Bhutanese, I don't know, what do you call them?
Bhutanese. Yeah.
Is wine a part of their culture? Or is alcoholic beverages, is that a part of their culture?
Yeah. So actually there was this, one of their heroes, their religious heroes, is this guy that was called the Mad Monk back in the, 1500s. And he was all about drinking and having sex. And
nothing wrong with that.
And so, and they revere it and they have temples to him and stuff. So in their culture, every family makes rice wine and they all have their own secret family recipe and they make it in their kitchen. They boil it on the stove and it's different flavors and textures and stuff. And everybody's convinced that theirs is the best and everybody else's is garbage. And so when you show up at someone's house, at a Bhutanese person's house, they will typically, the tradition is to greet you with a bowl of it's called ara. And you have the ara with them and you share it with them. And the Bhutanese, they love to drink. They just never had Vitis vinifera, grapes in Bhutan. It's just Marco Polo never made it there. The Roman army never made it there. All of the vectors that took those grapes all over the planet never got to Bhutan. And they didn't have any indigenous varietals like they did in many other countries like Greece or, Hungary or Georgia or wherever.
Okay.
So they just never had it.
Wow. So you literally had to bring varietals, or the I don't know what you would call it, the trimmings from the plants, the leaves, there's a word for it. It's the
branches.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The stuff you literally had to bring multiple samples there to see what would take in the soil, I would imagine.
Yeah. And Bhutan is the only carbon negative country on the planet, and they're revered for environmental sustainability. So bringing foreign plant species into that ecosystem is not as simple as just showing up with a suitcase full of grape cuttings. But yeah, we got it done. We're still actually figuring it out. So I have 14 different varieties planted there at kind of 3 or 4 different elevations, ranging from about 1,500 feet up to about 9,000 feet. And it takes 3 to 5 years for a grapevine to grow. Mm-hmm. And so we're in the process of figuring out. And I am convinced that a large percentage of those 14 are not going to work, which is fine. I don't need them all. I need 2 to work, or even one to work.
Just one.
I mean, that's what Argentina did with Malbec, and they poured the world market on Malbec.
Sure. Now, when you were there for the race, and I imagine you're running the hills and the streets, and you're not only thinking about finishing, but you're thinking there's an opportunity here. How'd you do in the race, by the way?
I did terrible. I think we ran it I think my finishing time was about 6 hours and 45 minutes or something, very slow. But I will say, so the route's super interesting. They drive you up the mountain, and you start in a national park, and you run down through this national park, and it's all the wilderness. And that's the first half of it. And in the second half of it, you get down to sort of the civilized area, which is the Punaka Valley. And there's all these, farms and hills and stuff. But the country is so magical and magnificent that it just, I was going up the hill with my girlfriend, and I'm like, we're not running this thing for time. Let's enjoy the hell out of today. And we were stopping and taking pictures with the little kids in the villages that we went through, and taking pictures with the yaks, and just enjoying the day and just not worried about the time. So we got to the end, I'm like, well, how we do? Well, okay, who cares? We had an awesome day.
I love it. It gets back, harkens back to Australia. I finished, and
Well, and here's an interesting thing to think about, with people that are really rabid runners, really worry about their time. But how many people do you know that have finished a marathon that have said, oh, that was the worst day of my life? Like, if it's the very first time you've ever done, they're like, oh my God, I finished. If it's, if they ran it, they're shooting for 4 hours and they ran it in 4 hours and 10 minutes, like, God, I almost got there. Like, there's no bad outcome for someone short of not finishing. And even not finishing is not terrible. I've not finished a couple marathons, and one marathon in particular, we ran the wine marathon in Bordeaux, where you run through the vineyards and you stop at all the chateaus and they're pouring great Bordeaux.
Of course.
It's so everyone dresses up in costume, and it is the greatest party ever. So I'm tooling along, and we're stopping, and, hitting all these Grand Cru Bordeaux's that you can't even get into, and drinking. And I get to the halfway point, and they're like, excuse me, sir, you didn't make the cutoff time. And I'm like, what cutoff time? And they're like, oh, there's a cutoff time. I'm like, no one told us there was a cutoff time. I would have been maybe trying a little bit harder. And they're like, sorry, sir, you have to quit. I was like, all right. So basically I spent the morning hanging out at a bunch of rated growth Bordeaux chateaus, drinking a bunch of wine, wearing a big tutu and My Little Pony socks with fur on the back. Like, what a great day. Did I finish? No. Do I
love it?
Super fun that day? Hell yeah. So the point of all this is that I think, there are other things in life where you're sort of, it's binary, right? It's either good or it's bad. I think with marathoning or any type of a race, there's no downside. Like, that doesn't matter if the person who ran it in 2 hours and 15 minutes is just as happy as the person who ran it in 8 hours, who's just as happy as Oprah running it in 4:35. They're all equally happy.
You're in the arena. I mean, you're dirty, you're sweaty and bruised, but you're in the arena doing what you set out to do it, whether you finished or not.
In contrast, by the way, Howard, to back to the team sports thing. You go out on a team sport, somebody wins and somebody loses, and the losing team goes home and feels like shit.
Right.
Nobody ever goes home feeling like shit after a marathon.
I love that. Where are some of the other adventurous places that you have? I mean, I think Bhutan has to be probably one, if not two, number two, or maybe three on the list. Where are some of the other adventurous locations that you've been pounding the pavement or the dirt?
How about the ice down by the South Pole?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, we ran a marathon on actually Antarctica. Antarctica's big. It's like it's the size of Australia.
Yeah.
It doesn't really look like it because it just, on a map, it doesn't really look as big as Australia, but it's big. So way in the interior of the country, of the continent, is this place called Union Glacier. And it's like a 12-mile long glacier, but it's wide enough and long enough to land a jet on it. And you're not going to hit anything. The jet slides on, but there's nothing to hit. It's just a river of ice. And so we flew in there. What was this? This was maybe 2015, maybe. And got out, ran a marathon there, which was just life-changing. I mean, it was stunning, the scenery and also trying to do something physical when it's -30 out and 50-mile-an-hour winds and snow and ice. And
I know you break a sweat when you're running or working out, but I can't imagine you're overcome. I mean, how do you overcome that kind of cold to finish a race like that?
Well, turns out it's harder than you might think. Particularly if you're born and raised in Southern California and not really used to cold weather. I made a lot of mistakes in that race. One of the mistakes I made was using a balaclava that was absorbent. So I had this balaclava over my head and face, and then you sweat because you're exerting yourself. And then my balaclava got wet, and then it froze to my head.
Oh boy!
And that sucked a lot.
Yeah.
I had like multiple layers on, and my bottom layer got too wet. And so at one point I actually had to go back into the tent. So it's a 13-mile loop. So you do it twice. And so the tent is, you pass it. And so when I passed the tent, I went back in and I changed shirts to swap because the other one was too wet and I was having the same issue. Like it was getting cold enough to start freezing. That's
I can imagine you said, I don't think I'm going to do that one again.
it's my son has expressed an interest in wanting to do it.
You're going to do it. You're going to do it.
But the other one that I want to do that I haven't done yet is they run a marathon on the sea ice around the North Pole.
Mm.
And it's tricky because the ice is not always thick enough to support like helicopters landing. And also there's polar bears. And so they kind of have to guard the route with rifles while you run. But it looks awesome. And that's on my sort of bucket list of more dumb shit to do.
Yeah. I would not want to be the slowest runner there, by the way.
Well, it's interesting because the way that they do it is they chalk out a mile circle around the North Pole with the North Pole in the center.
Okay.
And then you do 26 loops.
Okay.
It's way too dangerous to try to do a whole course. So you're basically just running in small little circles. So there's, however many people on the course, maybe it's, let's say 30, running around in circles. There's plenty of things for polar bears to eat.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Where else have your adventures taken you? Maybe not running, because I know I know you're a diver. Is this shark diving, whale watching, diving? What are you diving to see?
Yeah, so I'm not a good diver, but I am an enthusiastic one. One of my buddies is a neuroscientist at Stanford, and he was studying fear. And so he wanted to get some really authentic fear responses. And so he petitioned the Mexican government to let us go to the great white breeding grounds at Guadalupe Island, which is about 150 miles off the coast of Mexico. And so we went there with some experienced shark divers and spent a week out there hanging out with the great whites. And I learned an enormous amount about great whites. They're fascinating creatures. And also I was terrified for 168 hours of just terror. So I was an awesome candidate for the fear study because I have lots of it. Matter of fact, actually, the first time people were getting out of the cages and actually swimming around with the sharks and doing some really dangerous stuff, but I didn't quite push it that far. But the first time I came face to face with the great white was I was going into the cage and I was like focused on the ladder, and I turned around and there was about a 15-foot great white about 18 inches from my face just staring at me.
Oh my.
And they had warned us that the great whites is an apex predator. So if a great white comes at you, particularly if you're out of the cage, you swim straight at its head. And it confuses it because it's an apex predator. You're supposed to run away from it. And so it kind of peels off. It's bizarre to watch. It's crazy. So anyway, so I'm staring at this great white shark and it's this far away from me, just looking at me. And all I can think about is run for the ladder. But in my head, I'm like, if you do that, your prey, the odds are it might start attacking the cage, and the cage is pretty flimsy. Like it seems strong until you're sitting next to a thing that's the size of a Chevy Suburban and just raw power, right? So I just had to find that panic override reflex in my mind and wait for the shark to tail off. And it did eventually. And then I climbed out of the cage and passed out face first into the couch for 90 minutes.
Oh my.
It was that bunch of emotional just sledgehammer.
I can imagine. And yeah, I'm at the age is I don't do anything that has a potential for harm. I figure it's not worth it. Let somebody else enjoy that. So you got run.
So that's the opposite of me. I don't want to do anything unless there is a very real chance that I could get seriously injured or hurt.
Oh wow. So have you always been this way?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm curious, and again, with your consulting background, you've sat in enough of behavioral training and assessments and stuff like that. So I got to ask, uh, growing up, how many brothers and sisters?
I have four sisters.
Four sisters. That hadn't been fun.
Well, it's worse than that. My mom was one of nine girls, and she was the oldest. So basically, there was just estrogen everywhere when I was growing up.
Wow. How, and you have been this way. I mean, really, like, you're an all in kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like, there's no half measure. I'm all in. And this has been this way as long as you can remember?
As long as I can remember, I like my mom would tell stories about like how I would always just be getting hurt. And I remember, being like, I don't know, I was about 12 and there was this hill in our neighborhood that was like the Widowmaker Hill. And everyone was scared to skateboard down it. Like, it was like, it can't be done. It's undoable. And I was like, fuck it, if I could do this. And so I jumped on and went for it in front of all the teenagers that wouldn't do it. And hey, I'm sorry about the coughing, by the way. I'm just getting over COVID.
It's okay.
But yeah, I got about halfway down and spectacularly crashed and tore myself all up. And I still have a big scar on my knee from it. And that was 40 years ago. So
I bet you got a couple girlfriends out of that, though.
Yeah. The girls always like the risk-taking bad boys. At least some of them did.
There you go. I love it. I love it. So besides the running, the diving, what other adventure sports activities are you into?
Well, not as much these days, but I grew up doing an enormous amount of rock climbing. Like, we could go out and just like sleep in the sand at Joshua Tree and just climb. Then, doing a variety of motorcycle type of activities, since I was, 15 or 16. I have a barrage full of motorcycles for different purposes, and I like to go very fast on them in very risky kind of situations. Done a lot of hiking, climbing, a lot of beach stuff, a lot of surfing, skateboarding. I was a big skateboarder and raced BMX bikes, and
you've got the artwork that kind of demonstrates this guy is into these sports. I love that. By the way, not that you don't have enough on your plate, you need to check out the Outdoor Writers Association of America, because your stories would be great for another. I'm sure you have another book in you. Maybe it's not going to be about wine, but wine and adventure. Who knows? But I love the fact that you've got all these stories. I mean, there's another book in there for you, by the way.
I will definitely. Is it Outdoor Writing Adventures? Is it about motorcycles?
Well, it's Outdoor Writers Association of America.
Oh, writers.
Yeah.
Okay. I interpret that as RIDERS. Right.
Okay.
You meant writers. Yeah. Definitely check it out.
Well,
I can combine the two and talk about riding motorcycles in the Himalayas, which is all kinds of fun.
There you go. You've got the motorcycle riding, wine growing, shark diving kind of guy. Speaking of writing, I know you've got a book that you have produced. Is it about wine? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've written actually a number of books. I've written 7 books about wine.
7. Okay.
7. Yeah. 3 of them are novels. And they are all kind of hustle fiction, sort of man style robbing and guns, but they're all centered around wine.
Okay.
And then I wrote a book of short stories called The Champagne Tales, which every book is about champagne in some way, but it ranges from like Nazi Germany to the ghetto in East LA to, Instagram influencers and that whole world. That was a lot of fun to write. I'm really proud of that one. And then I wrote Drinking and Knowing Things, which is kind of a how-to get really smart about wine without doing any work whatsoever. And then I wrote the sequel to that. And then I also wrote a Drinking and Knowing Things Guide to New Zealand, just randomly. Because I thought it'll be interesting to see if I could write a country guide. So
I love it. By the way, the Drinking and Knowing Things, I think that would be the book I need. I just know I like wine when I drink it, but you know, I couldn't tell you much more about it, but that sounds like the perfect book. So this the work that you're doing now with in training to become the advanced sommelier, this world class master of wine, what is entailed to achieve really a very the club is very there's another word I'm missing. I haven't had enough coffee in me. It's a select club, okay?
Yeah.
It's like being the president of the United States, or almost all of them, but it's a select club. So what does that entail?
You essentially have to demonstrate your worthiness to the Institute of Masters of Wine. And the way that you do that is through a series of tests that test your knowledge of every facet of the wine industry, from growing grapes to making wine to producing wine to bottling and handling to wine laws, the business of wine, current issues. You have to know everything, and you have to know it at a global level, and to be able to talk about it both globally and locally. And then you have to blind taste 36 wines over a 3-day period and write an essay about each one. And the questions they could ask you might be like, how was this wine made? Where was it? Where is it from? What is the grape? What is the commercial positioning of this wine? And so I've passed everything except that 3-day blind tasting exam. I've now failed 4 years in a row. I'm going to take it for the 5th time here on July 25th or 26th, something like that. It's coming up soon. And hopefully this will be my year, but
Okay, well, it's going to be your year.
I hope so, man. But it is kind of a funny party trick. Like, people run over and hand me a glass of wine. Oh, when is this, Mike? And I go, oh, okay, this is a Riesling from Australia, and I think it's probably from the Clare Valley because of this. And I think it's 12% alcohol. And they go, oh my God, you're exactly right. How do you do it? They say you basically take a borderline autistic, mindset for 10 years, just writing shit down and trying over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And most people are way too smart to waste a decade doing that. So
I love it. I love it. I am curious. You're a senior partner in a very large firm, and I would imagine you're off. Well, now we're still virtual in a way. Maybe you guys are back in an office, but do they ever ask, so where's Michael? Oh, he's somewhere.
So everyone in my firm is just sort of, just say, like, we don't understand it. Get your numbers done and do whatever it is that Mike is going to do, because, there's no stopping or controlling you. We just sort of try to harness the energy in the way that's most successful. But, the good news is if you think about trying to live this sort of, your best life kind of thing, part of that is having a career, a vocation that has flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's much harder to do with a 9 to 5, or like if you're an emergency room doctor and you're on call, right? Like it's hard to live it's harder. And so, the consulting lifestyle, as I'm on a plane and going to visit a client, and then I'm on a plane going to visit another client. And then I'm working from home. And then, some weeks you're working 80 hours and some weeks are a little lighter. You're working 30. So I think the opposite is that vocation allows me a broader capacity to do some of the stuff that I'm interested in doing.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. Now, do you have an opportunity to mentor and coach others?
Yeah.
In your role? I
do. Yeah. We do a lot of both formal and informal mentoring. We have some very structured programs. And I also work, I think you mentioned at the onset that I teach at the UC Irvine Business School, and I've been a part of their mentorship program for, I think, probably like going on 15 years now. So I get assigned a student. I'm a member of our this emerging program that does mentoring for diverse candidates.
Mm-hmm.
to try to really help them, continue to be successful and feel included and be a part of the corporate culture. So yeah, I would say I bet at this stage of my career, 15% of my time almost is borderline devoted to helping others grow.
That's great. I mean, just the experience and the experiences that you've had. I mean, it's like this incredible wealth of knowledge, and it's like, hopefully the younger folks, especially I would imagine you're not coaching and mentoring the newbie who's just come into the firm, but at some level, that they're appreciative of of what they're getting, because they may not really truly anticipate it, because you're all in.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. Like, I don't spend a lot of time with the newbies because they're still trying to figure out, what this whole lifestyle is and this career that they've gotten into. Where I really oftentimes get involved are like people who are senior managers who are trying to make partner, and they're trying to crack the code for, okay, how do I get out of this, being an employee and be an equity owner of the firm and help, move into that career milestone. And that's where I would say I spend the most of my time, is folks kind of around that level, helping them navigate that final hurdle.
Okay. Now, with the firm, your interest in the racing, it's not just running, what's going on in Bhutan. We didn't talk a lot about the rum. And by the way, what I appreciate about the rum, it's not your typical, my little rum drink with a little umbrella in the glass, but this is good stuff. So I have had good rum before. So that's interesting. Where do you see yourself, I mean, it's a typical consulting firm. Where do you want to be doing in 5 years, 10 years? You talked about Antarctica, or the Arctic Circle, excuse me, running around the North Pole. Besides, in addition to the wine, what other challenge it's kind of maybe sitting in the back of the, somewhere in the brain, and you're just starting to contemplate, like, I want to do that. Anything like that coming up for you?
Well, so I mean, for us, we're very much in early stage of Bhutan. We're trying to build this wine industry, but we don't know what grapes are going to grow well. We don't know what styles of wine are going to emerge. We haven't even made our first harvest yet, even though I have grapes that have been in the ground now for 5 years, or in their 5th growing season. Let's put it that way. So one of the things I'd like to see if I were to look out 5 years, is I would like to see that more structured with what the direction is. And, this is not a project for my lifetime. This is a project for our grandchildren, 50 years from now. Like you think about Napa, like when Davi was screwing around with this in like the late 60s, and now all of a sudden Napa's this big thing. He's long since passed on. But that legacy and that, Napa is this globally relevant thing. So I'd love to see us on the path to being globally relevant in 50 years, in 5 years time. The other thing is, I mentioned my divorce, and it clearly had an impact on the way I view the world, but I stopped chasing stuff. I think we all get a little bit too caught up in chasing stuff. And I decided instead I wanted to chase happiness.
Sure.
And the things that make me happy are adventures and making stories. And so I don't know what, when I went to Antarctica, it was literally one of my friends like, you want to go to Antarctica? And I was like, yeah, I want to go to Antarctica. Let's go. Bhutan. Do you want to go to Bhutan? Yes, I want to go to Bhutan. So what I hope is over the next 5 years, I continue to get presented with opportunities like that. And I hope that I continue to have the balls to say, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. And I don't know what they are, but like the Bhutan thing, I never in a million years thought when I responded to a spam email that, 5 years later, I'd be doing a podcast talking about inventing the wine industry, just happened organically at this capacity to lean in. So what I hope is that if we have this podcast in 5 years, I got some better, cooler stories to tell.
You know, we're going to have this podcast in 5 years because we're going to see what you've been up to. And by the way, as I listen to you, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's all in. I mean, I kind of make it sound like I'm totally playing it safe, and I do. But I probably could lean you just a little bit more. And so you've gifted that to me today. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, Tim.
Before we head out, and I want to get, the best places to our listeners can find you, learn more about you and your work. As you look back on your life, today versus when you were that kid nailing that hill, right down the street and getting the girls, by the way. Is there an aha moment that you look back and you say, wow, I didn't go in, somebody once said, I don't know who it was, said, I don't want to slide in nice and easy. I want to go in head first and get dirty and say,
I think Larry Thompson said, like, I want to come careening in on two wheels and, with every organ on the verge of failure and death. That's definitely how I want to go. Like, okay. I want to squeeze every last bit of utility out of the time we've got. But I would say I bet that I have like really powerful epiphany aha moments about every 5 years or so, and that sort of lead me to the next chapter in my life. Maybe one of the ones that I could talk about was, and I mentioned my divorce a couple times, and then not to flog a dead horse, but I will say that there was a moment when the discussion was about a life insurance check. And the attorneys were writing letters back and forth and arguing about who got the check and, whether or not. And finally, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm going to go look into this. So it's like a bunch of the issues coming in, dug into it. And I found the check. And the check was for $17. And I was like, we just spent literally like $10,000 in attorney's fees and 6 months of emotional energy arguing over $17. This is like the dumbest way to spend a life. And there was, at that point, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I have limited time on this planet. And if I, get to that end of the rope and so what did you accomplish in life? Fought over $17 for 10 years, and like, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. And so that was a really kind of a turning point for me, is that goddamn $17 check.
I love it. As we kind of head out now, and again, this is the last feature on our show, is any final thought that you would like, or gift, your gift of knowledge and awareness experience that you would like to leave with our listeners? And I mean, this aha moment you just described it in some ways is an insight to go, but anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we do head out today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I mentioned this a couple of times, is this idea of sort of chasing happiness or chasing joy rather than chasing stuff or money or whatever. I think if you chase joy and you find it, you win. And if you chase joy and you just fail to grasp it, you had a hell of a good time. And what better way to spend a life than to be happy?
I love it. It's perfect. Michael, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
Probably the easiest thing is to go to drinkingandknowingthings.com. And there's links to my books, and I think there's links to some of my social media stuff. Certainly talks about, SoCal Rum and the Bhutan Wine Company and all that stuff. So that's probably the easiest way to do that. And then I encourage you that I'm always happy to hear from people, and I respond to emails and Instagram messages and stuff. I want, if you have a hankering to lean in with me on any of this stuff, I'm happy to geek out with you about it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for that. And really, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And, for our listeners, Michael shared that he literally he had closed on a house out east. He's a California guy now living out east. Boy, is he in for something. But really, Michael, totally appreciate you. And grateful that you've taken some time out of your day to join us on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast and sharing a little bit about your best life.
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you, Howard. Had a great time, and we'll see you in 5 years, and hopefully I've got some even cooler stories to share with your listeners.
Sounds like a plan. Listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close, and then you and I can have a final chat. Okay?
Cool.
Great. All right, folks. What a great addition to the Outdoor Adventure Series, chatting with Michael Juergens. He is an adventure racer, diver. I mean, he's dove around great white sharks. He is a soon to be, God willing, and knock on wood, the father of the wine industry in Bhutan. He's has a company that's making phenomenal rum, author, partner at a major consulting company that I swear to God, he's got an S on his chest. And I know I see the art on the arms, but there's got to be an S on the chest. And I think he was just being, humble at this point. But what a great episode. I mean, talk about living your best life, not letting the little things get in the way. And really, it gets back to the quote from the speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave about the man in the ring. I mean, unless you are in the ring, you never know what it's going to be like. And, get into the ring, lean in, get dirty, sweaty, sore. But once you're in the ring, then opportunities available to you, experiences, and you should be taking advantage of that. And that's really one of the big takeaways from this conversation with Michael today. And we do hope you enjoyed it. This episode will be up on the Outdoor Adventure Series website, and you can find us at outdooradventureseries.com. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook. We have our pages, the Outdoor Adventure Series, and we are on all of the major podcast directories. So wherever you listen to this episode, like it, comment on it, share it, let us know what you're thinking. Do go out to Michael's website, drinkingandknowingthings.com. You'll learn a lot about Michael and his work, and there's also links to his social sites as well. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.